Man was given, as we mentioned, Samoin, the foundation tablet, and learned about the creation and man's place in creation as an explanation of the universe per se. But it says that evil's there, but it doesn't really help man to deal with that evil. How do you deal with that evil? How do you live so that the S part of man can continue living even while the beast is in existence? Well, man was given a second tablet, and that tablet is called the Tablet of Bienei. And the Tablet of Bienei is actually related to the Tablet of Samoin in many ways. We can take the lessons that we've learned, that we talked about with regard to cycles and so forth, and apply them to the Tablet of Bienei. Because the Tablet of Bienei is essentially what we just talked about, which is how do you deal with the beast in man? How do you keep the S aspect of man alive? And so today what we're going to do is look at this Tablet of Bienei, and we're just going to give it a cursory look. We're not going to go into it into a great amount of detail. First thing we'll notice is that there's 33 realities, and they're again ordered 1 through 11, and then 12 through 22, and then 23 through 33. So what we're going to do is we're going to briefly look at the Tablet of Bienei in relationship to as to what it is, which is man in relationship to the beast, and how do you keep the S in front of the beast. Along with the Tablet of Bienei, which was the second tablet given to man, and it was given afterward, after he had learned about the creation and the order and system and everything like that, and then man was ready to learn how to deal with the beast. What we note above the Tablet of Bienei, above the glyphs themselves, is a group of animals there, and we see that there's 3 gads or gods, and these are the Baogan, who's the lion, and the Taogan, who is the bull, and the Bagan, who is the sheep. And now these are actually the types of iods, the types of gods. Now, iod in Bienei is 23. It starts the 3rd row of synthesis. So we'll get back to those 3 and what the meanings of those gads. And the animal aspect. The animals up there represent the animal aspects of man. Some of the animals because man looked at the animals and he learned from the animals. And we know this even to this day. Part of the teachings that have endured to this day. Every culture has its purpose and its function. And one of the functions, for example, of the Chinese was to keep the ancient language, the first language of man, to keep close to that. Okay, well, one of the things that the Gautaman culture did in the United States here, and the United States, well, in the Americas, actually, was the use of totem, the use of animals. Now, this wasn't the only culture that did this, and there were other cultures that also used animals and the qualities of animals. For example, the Chinese. And the Chinese would imitate their movements, for example, in their exercises and in their martial arts, as we well know. But the Gautamans used the animals, the nature of the animal, whether an animal had courage or wisdom or cunning or whatever it was, and they attempted to emulate that particular nature, that particular spirit, in order to build that up within them. And they were ranked in the clans where groups of people worked on these things. And then these clans were ordered themselves, and that was what the totem was. It was the order of the clans and so forth. And that you don't have a tribe really, essentially, until you have all the clans represented and functioning. We can learn from the animal nature, but we also can know that the animal nature can destroy, and so we want to remain with our S above the animal nature. And so when we look at the first glyph in the tablet of Bienei, it is Oahspe. Now Oahspe is the animal man, pure animal man. It has no capability whatsoever of eternal life. A diffuse spirit like a tree. There was no focus there. There was no cohesiveness that would say, I am distinct from this out here. He didn't think in terms of self. He didn't have the self developed. The self needs to be developed in order to attain to eternal resurrection. The self has to, because without this there is no resurrection. And so the first thing that gets developed within an individual is the self. And the self is a part of the animal aspect. Comes from that. It's rooted in, centered in corporea. This is where the self comes forth from at conception and birth. And only in corporea here is man, is our new souls brought forth, new spirits, new human beings, essentially. And it comes through this corporea, and through all, but not just corporea, but it also comes through all the elements that are, essentially, because we come from Jehovah as a spark of His light that then gets clothed in all this atmospherea and corporea and so forth. Well, this animal man, this Oahspe, this is our core. We have that at our core. And now that core, we don't have to think of it necessarily in terms of our animal man. We can think of it in terms of ourself, of I am. And we have to start there. We have to start by an understanding that we are separate from everything out there, that we are an individual. We are a person and we are an individual. We have life and we have motion. And no one can take those away from us. We'll always be who we are. We'll always be an individual. We'll always be a human being. We'll always have the capacity for motion. Even if just in our mind, we can still do it. In other words, if we're incapacitated corporeally, we can still, our spirit need not be thus bound. And our thoughts need not be thus bound. This center, this core, this self that we have, we need to build upon that. We build upon that. When a child first comes out of the womb and for the first year of its life, it's essentially learning about, it's essentially pure animal. It's in the sense that it's learning everything. It has no self per se. It's learning to differentiate between itself and everything out there. And it's able to do that because of the seed that it inherited from its parents. And because they were capable of this focus, of self, of knowing that they are an entity, that they can say I am, and know that they are. I am, and I know I am. And so they're capable of doing that. Well, the child can do that too. We'll develop to that.